So welcome to Northern Powerhouses, our business success stories series of interviews where we discuss with local business leaders, their backgrounds, their successes and their challenges and what's really driving them forwards. And this afternoon, I'm delighted to have with us Ben Liggins, who's Managing Director at JBAndrews. So firstly, Ben, thank you for spending a bit of time for us. And if you'd like to introduce yourself and JBAndrews and the wonderful things you do, that would be great.
Thank you, Chris. Pleasure to meet you. So, as you said, Ben Liggins, Managing Director of JBAndrews, specifically JBAndrews UK. So we are a global executive search business. And I put emphasis on the UK because we have an office now in the Middle East, in Dubai as well. So I've got a business partner called 𝗟ში 𝗴𝗂𝘀𝘁𝗶𝗃, who September 2021 it will have been, so a year and a half ago. Yep. He and five of our staff opened an office over in Dubai as well.
Wow.
But we started January 2018.
Yep.
And then, as I've said, global executive search, but primarily for three areas. It's logistics and supply chain, medical and scientific, and industrial, which is a very big banner, particularly for chemicals recruitment. And that's us.
Wonderful, wonderful. Well, if we start talking maybe a little bit about your background, Ben, how you got into business and why this particular one.
So, business studies graduate from Lancaster University. Grew up in the middle of nowhere near Leicester. I'll say near Leicester, but it was 40 minutes away still from our doorstep. Yep. So yeah, I grew up in the middle of nowhere. Always had a passion for business, but also sport as well. That's kind of my main interest outside of my now family life, I should say. Different priorities these days. But grew up, yeah, not really knowing exactly what I would go into. Business studies opened several doors, or kept the doors open, I should probably say. And yeah, I think if you speak with many people in recruitment specifically, they'll use the phrase "they fell into the industry," and that was the same for me. At the time, I was after final year of university, applying for graduate positions, big graduate schemes with big businesses, which all of those went well. And then I can remember the specific call, what will have been over 10 years ago now, from then my future boss. And the rest was history. I joined a business called 𝗟𝙗𝙀 here in Leeds.
Yep.
Had never been to Leeds before that as well, so it was a big gamble.
Yep.
And yeah, 𝗟𝙗𝙀 they are our majority shareholder today. So just over 5.5 years ago, myself and Josh were afforded the opportunity to open JBAndrews as top performers within the 𝗟𝙗𝙀 group. We were offered the chance to open our own business and have equity in our own business as well. And the path that we will follow will be to buy back the shareholding from 𝗟𝙗𝙀 over hopefully the next 5 or 6 years, starting this year. So it's a really important year for us.
Yes. Well, sorry, go on.
No, I was going to say the only as I said, fell into recruitment, and actually I owe it to a particular gentleman called Jamie, who he works for a recruitment business in the Midlands today, and he recruited for my father. Became a family friend. Big rugby union fan, so we used to see them at Leicester Tigers every weekend. And it was him that kind of pointed me in the direction of recruitment initially. I always remember him saying, if you survive the first 3 months and you're still enjoying it, then you'll be in it for a long time. And this is my 10th year. So August this year will be 10 years in executive search in the same group. So it's been fast paced, let's say.
So when you were growing up, was this sort of thing you saw yourself doing, or did you have another path planned?
I mentioned sport.
Yes.
I think it's most lads' dreams to be a footballer or a rugby player or something, and I was maybe slightly different. I always wanted to be a football manager. So that was what I would have absolutely loved to have done. But at the same time so my father was a finance director in various industries. My grandfather had his own tractor parts engineering business. So I always knew office life was I guess, in my blood, for want of a better phrase. That's a bit of a cliche. But I could always see myself in an office, hence choosing business studies. All the different work experiences I did were office based, and it kind of fit quite naturally for me. So never really saw myself ever as a salesman. And I think if you met me in person, or if people meet me in person as well, they probably wouldn't think this is the industry that I work in. But for me personally, it clicked. I guess, it's bluntly put, selling people to people, which is a pretty difficult form of sales, because we've all got brains and can make some weird and wonderful decisions at the very last minute. But I just love it. You just before we spoke, you said about how much you love speaking to people.
Yeah,
That's my day job as well, and it makes I've not looked forward to work in a long time, if that makes sense. And it's the people that we speak with on a daily basis that make that happen. So
wonderful. Now, I just wanted to you're just processing something you said a little earlier. So your shareholders helped you and your business partner set up.
That's right.
That sounds like a very enlightened thing to do. A lot of people very scarce about trying to avoid that. Does that happen a lot, or has that happened a lot with your shareholders, or is a case?
I think it's a fantastic business model that we would love to replicate, because they've certainly landed on their feet. Because what JBAndrews is part of, as I've said, we're part of a group of companies, but really we're competing with all of them as well. Right. So my bosses, who have that major shareholding, I think it's maybe I'm wrong. There's 7 or 8, possibly 9 different businesses within the group, various locations now. So Dubai is the international office for obviously for us, but also for the group. There's multiple offices now in London. Leeds is the hub, which I was surprised to learn about recruitment in the first place. There are so many recruitment businesses here, so many executive search businesses specifically as well. Everyone seems to know everyone in a sometimes a good way, sometimes a bad way. But it's a really unique setup where the goal is for us to have 100% ownership of JBAndrews, to afford. There's two guys in particular that work with us today. Who one of them's essentially my right hand man, the other is Josh's right hand man over in Dubai, who they will have a piece of this pie as well, hopefully. And it's about getting that fully in motion this year and progressing. Now that it was a good year still last year, but a slightly more difficult one for everybody in the industry, or at least the start of this year had been. And I think we're back on an upward curve, which is exciting. And as I said, this is the most important year for our business for a multitude of reasons. We've got the buyout hopefully happening. We've got a rebrand on the way in a couple of weeks as well. Not a rebrand in terms of company name or something like that, but if you see any publications from our side on our website or on our LinkedIn profiles, you'll see this a strapline, putting people first, and that will always remain a core value. But we're changing that. We've done all sorts of work. We've done external client surveys, we've done internal surveys, and we're forming something proper, let's say, because as a startup still, we definitely jumped ahead maybe a little bit too quickly, but now we're maturing. We have we have typical functions like a head of marketing, we've got a head of talent, we've got everything's now set up. It's not just a group of recruitment consultants anymore. Wonderful. It's evolving.
So as you've grown, what would you say are some of the biggest issues you've had to overcome?
Growth. You say as you've grown, growth has been the biggest issue. So Josh and I, the one thing that we wanted for JBAndrews was to try and focus on that people side of the business, because recruitment as an industry has a bit of a stigma. It's always had a very high turnover of staff. It's super sales driven, arguably the most difficult form of sales, and that brings challenges naturally for a function anyway. But recruiting the right person in an increasingly competitive market, that's been the key thing for us. And we've got some incredibly right and we've got some incredibly wrong as well, and we've learned from it. We've hopefully now applied it, and in that growth, bringing in, I say, a head of talent. So he's quite a complicated title, but he's brought with him. He used to work with us some years ago, right at the start. He went to a big corporate, not recruitment business, but he went to a big fashion brand in an internal talent acquisition role, and he's brought with him an idea of process that perhaps we've never really truly had. We've definitely had our own processes that have succeeded, but it's bringing a very different view to what we've done through these years, and we feel far more mature as a business and ready for that growth, where I've mentioned Dubai. They went over as 6 people. They're 15 today, and that was just a year and a half ago. So that's been quick.
Yeah.
The red tape involved in setting up a business over there was really something, and all I had to do was put pen to paper on stuff. That was Josh doing all the legwork over there. But it's paid off. They're in a fantastic spot, and Teams calls with them on the 36th or 37th floor of their building with the blue skies in the background is slightly difficult to swallow at times. But no, growth has been, that's been the main challenge. But again, that's a good headache to have. That's what we feel anyway. It helps you kick on to that next level each time. So it's go ahead. I was just going to say, it's not been the 5 years that we've done it in. 2018, 2019, 2020, they were good for everybody, I think. And then obviously the world changed. And I guess we're slightly lucky in the sense of we're doing this talk over video right now, and go pre-COVID or even at the start of COVID, there wasn't really much of this happening at all. It was all phone based, or one thing that we really wanted to do was to have an increased exposure and presence in exhibitions, at actually meeting clients and candidates face to face, traveling abroad. That's what we really wanted to push, and we've managed it. And Dubai is now a big example of that. But we also now don't need to do it. Technology has really taken over, especially for what we do, and we're very grateful for it. So.
Brilliant. It's really interesting, isn't it? Because growth, as you say, creates its own challenges, and people don't always realise that, because they sort of think, well, it'd be great, but it comes.
I think each year has been very good from an outsider's perspective. You see it, you can see the numbers, the profit levels. We're very lucky to be where we are today. The way I'd probably summarize it is we ran before we walked. Again, another kind of cliche phrase, but we became the business. We've built the business to a point that I think we probably need the business to be in maybe 2 or 3 years' time. And we've had to stop. We've had to think. We've had to make some changes in a constructive way, where sometimes you've got to take a little step back to be able to move forwards beyond that. And I think the next few months in particular will be defining in terms of the trajectory we now follow in certain avenues of the business. And it's exciting going through stuff like that, because it's different to the normal day job. Because Josh and I still recruit as well. I still have my own, again, going very basic, I still have my own revenue target each month and things like that, and I still enjoy it. So it makes it that bit easier.
Great, wonderful. That's great to hear. So looking at business specifically, what would you say are the biggest things you've learned about growing a business?
To not get ahead of ourselves. That's the biggest one. I think the people side of things, the recruitment side of things is so important. We're a recruitment business. We really should know how to create a recruitment best practice. And I think a big thing for everybody in this industry in particular is you might think your way works perfectly, and sometimes it doesn't. So not getting ahead of ourselves was a big thing, and just focusing on quality, not quantity, when it comes to the people side of things, not just bums on seats, but actually focusing on the quality of person and seeing how we can grow that way. That's been a big thing for us as well. Recruiting
the wrong people is way more expensive than not having the people at all. Or
Exactly.
can be, can't it?
Sounds like one of my sales calls to a client or something. It's so true. It's so true.
We've certainly found that in both recruiting for ourselves, but also working with clients you know, you get to that point. Some people get where we just want to put a bum on the seat, as you rightly say, but if the person on the seat isn't performing,
No,
you've got a gap that you can't see, because
exactly.
they're doing something, but you don't realise without the right level of monitoring that
Exactly.
they're not doing enough. Now, you mentioned a few people already, but I'm as a coaching organisation, I'm keen to know who are the best coaches you've worked with historically, whether that's business or sport or life in general.
So that's a great question, because I could give examples from very different spheres. The one that will always come to mind is my dad, and I imagine a lot of people would say it as well. But he's as I said earlier, he was senior in his field. I think he and my grandfather in particular would have loved me to follow a finance route as well, and maths was fine. I was never bad at it in any way, but it definitely wasn't my passion at all. So no, my father, he was a very good businessman, great with numbers, but a very big calming influence on me as a person, not just professionally but personally. And he's the kind of he's my go-to if I have an important question, not about business really, but just life in general. I will always speak with him first. And I think I was saying this the other day to actually my bosses. I think if my father was honest, he wouldn't want me to have gone into the field I went into in recruitment, because of that stigma.
Yeah.
He used recruiters himself, as I've mentioned, not always positive experiences. So I think that was a bit of a risk. But he himself, I think his father expected him to go into that family business, and he said no. He forged his own path, and that's what I wanted to do as well. So he'll be the first name. My two bosses, in particular, their names are Nick and Dom. Both very different characters, bring very different skill sets to what they do. I worked for Nick in particular in kind of, well, my early years, my formative years, I guess. So really, I learned most of what I know from both of them, and Nick in particular. And yeah, 10 years ago, it's a very different organization now to what it was 10 years ago as well. They've evolved, the whole group's evolved in a really positive way, embracing all the changes to work or work life, I guess. But no, in terms of, I guess, my successes, they were the reason for that as well. And yeah, fingers crossed we can find a very good solution these coming years where we buy that business off them, so everyone's a winner as well. From a sporting perspective, it was never really, I can't think of any one particular name, but then from a I don't think he realizes that he does it, but there's one particular client of mine who's come into play over this last year for me, who's a HR director at a regional level for a big business that I work with, and I'll stop short of saying his name, but if he watches this, he'll probably know who he is. And just his influence on me and the way I operate. He comes from a big business background, so bringing process to the recruitment process. But he's somebody who will very happily, off the record, coach me without knowing he's coaching me. So feedback in our industry, in any industry, is so important. That back and forth, it should really never stop. And he's been brilliant in being proactive about not just me and the way I do things, but he's spoken with some colleagues of mine who perhaps there are areas that we can develop with them. And it's almost no value to him to do that, but it's just something natural that he does. And that's hopefully something that we apply here as well. That self-policing type office culture, not self-policing sounds disciplinary related. That's not what I'm trying to say. That's from a coaching perspective. If I'm busy, if the senior managers are busy in the office, maybe some members of staff who've been there a year or a year and a half or something like that will happily answer a question for a new starter without any complaints, just smile on their face all the time. That's the culture that we've tried to create. here, which again comes back to that people first mentality part. So yeah, I'd say those in particular are the coaches I've looked up to, and I guess fingers crossed their influence on me. Hopefully my name would be said for some of those in our office, at least here in Leeds, for that, if they're asked that question now or maybe in a couple of years.
Let's hope so. No, that's wonderful. That's absolutely super. And have you? I love to pick up quotes or sayings. Are there any particular quotes or sayings that you find yourself using on a regular basis?
Not necessarily a quote or a saying. The word "yet" forms a big part of my vocabulary, and that's from I'm hopefully glass half full, and I hope everyone in there is as well. But sometimes if you ask them a question and perhaps they give an answer where there's an outright no or something like that, I don't like that. I would really like people to say no, not yet, because there's always that glimmer of hope that something positive will happen. The people first thing is a big thing for us. So putting people first, and for me personally, family first. That's a very big thing, and that's with the candidates and even the clients we speak with. Sometimes family things do get in the way, and having that, being able to say to them, I absolutely understand, family first or health first. That's a really big thing. Never, don't get too high and never get too low has always been something that's resonated too. And that's as it says on the tin. I personally, you'll never see me as the super excited one, and you'll never see me as the super sad one either, because it's an industry where you have to take some hits. Rejection's a big thing in recruitment, and that cycle, it can affect you right at the start, and I think over time you become slightly numb to it. But yeah, that's also a phrase I've enjoyed through life.
Brilliant. And what would you say are some of the things you've learned about yourself through your journey so far?
That I can be a salesman. I think I said earlier that wasn't what I thought I would be at all. But I can do a good job in that field. I think it's more to do with, for me, it's more to do with having a goal and being able to meet it is huge for me. I can't work without a to-do list or something to aim for. And actually, I think the biggest thing is to realign my goals, because I was talking to a colleague the other day about, it's been a fantastic 10 years, and you asked me what I wanted to be when I grew up, essentially. What did I want to do as a career path? And if I think back to university days or even before, thinking about life in general, what did I want to achieve? And I said to my colleague, it sounds like I'm being a bit of an idiot by saying it, but I'm 30. What I wanted was the same sort of life that I grew up with. Felt lucky in terms of childhood and upbringing. So for me, with that family first thing in mind, being able to provide for my family, I always had in my head, because I've got a sister, so one son, one daughter. I'd always had 2 kids in mind, one of each gender, which I'm lucky enough to now have. I've got a daughter who's almost turning 3 and a son who's just turned 6 months. Lovely wife who works for us when she's not on maternity leave as well. She recruits people for JBAndrews, which is nice to do. But building that life for my family plus this business, JBAndrews, for me is actually, it's a step ahead of what I always wanted. I always thought I'd be in a big corporate or something like that, and actually having my own business was always an ambition, but I never expected it. So to have all that now is brilliant, and it's about thinking ahead and having another goal and making those goals more ambitious than I really think they should be. I think I read something the other day about a study where 2 guys called it having a big, hairy, ambitious goal, a 𝗍𝗪, and having that there to strive towards. And it might seem ridiculous, but as long as you keep going towards that goal, if you don't meet it, you'll get pretty close. So I think that's what I need to now try and do, is think ahead beyond this buyout. What do I want from life? So
great. Yeah, it's I do a lot of work with business owners. It's amazing how many business owners don't know what they need, what their business needs to look like to give them their personal goals. It's like a lot of people do business planning based on the business. So if I say to somebody, where do you want to be? And they say 5 million or 10 million or whatever, I know they've not related it directly to their personal goals, because if they did, it would be 6.32 or 11.52. If it makes any sense.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's our personal life that drives us forward. If that makes
this is it. Well, and then values in your personal life should naturally lead into business life. And you say, I mentioned doing that rebranding project, and a big part of it is redefining our company values. We have a handful today, and I think there'll be 8 or 9 by the end of it, where people first being one of them. You mentioned about quotes and things. There's a book we don't expect, but we hope everyone will willingly read and enjoy reading, which is sports related again, which is a book called 𝗟𝙀𝙀 𝙀𝙀. And 2 of our favorite things as a business, but for me as a person as well, I'll stop short of saying the full word, but it talks about no something heads.
Feel free.
no dickheads.
Absolutely.
And that's so big for us, is not having that potentially toxic character or characters in this office, because that affects culture in such a big way. And then the other one for us, which is huge, is sweep the sheds. About, it doesn't matter who you are in the business, do the little jobs. Taking a mug from the kitchen table to the sink and putting it in the dishwasher, cleaning the sauce off the floor that someone's apparently just left. There's really small jobs that make such a big difference. And we've just started planning a 3 Peaks challenge walk.
Brilliant.
As an office, which I couldn't do last year, but a group did last year, and it apparently showed the characters in the office that will naturally take on those values.
Yes.
And yeah, I'm looking forward to that, because it'll be a bigger group. We do quite a lot of work, particularly with the Leeds Rhinos Foundation and Leeds Mind. And a lot of the stuff we do is about that community aspect, where we're all here to do the same thing. We're all here to make money. That why we wouldn't do recruitment if we didn't want to do that. But being able to give back and see people shaping like that as well, with those values that underpin everything, like the sweep the sheds element. They're really big things for us as a company, but for me as an individual as well. So bringing personal values into a job, into a company, I can't champion that highly enough.
Brilliant. No, fabulous book.
My favorite, I think.
It's a really cool, and it's a really cool, I think the way they described the fact they realized that the culture was toxic at the start, and there was that whole invention of doing so. And there's some, I think I remember I listened to something called the High Performance Podcast, which is again taking interviews with mainly sports people, and I think it was Manchester United, Rio Ferdinand was saying that one of the players, one of the new players, as they went off at half time, he was walking off, and he jogged past him and saying, "No, Man United, we run off the pitch at half time."
Yeah, that's it.
Walk off. You won't be playing in the second half, and it's that sort of self-policing culture that so makes it so powerful.
So that, I love that. I've read the book. I haven't listened to the podcast as much, but I know it's Jake Humphrey and a professor, isn't it, as well. And one of the things that stands out for me on that was another Man United guy, Phil Neville. Which was very unexpected. As much as I love him as a guy, I didn't think he'd be used as an example so frequently in this book anyway. And one of the things that we talked about with him, or it talks about with him, was him as something called a cultural architect. And we've started using that language here as well, where the behaviors, the non-negotiables that person has, they're naturally shaped by the environment that you're in. And him coming from Man United, moving to Everton, where at the time there was nothing, and him bringing that insight, that non-negotiable behavioural style to that setup is why he became their captain, and why Everton had several good years as well. I also love that book. It's brilliant to see, and really plays to kind of my passions of business and sport combined. So
brilliant. No, I can see we like similar books. So looking forward, Ben, what does the future look like for you? Obviously, you've got some things right on the horizon, but looking further forward, maybe what's the future look like for you guys, and what are the main challenges you face, if any?
So again, it's the main challenge is growth, and I can kind of contextualize that. So we, at the start of this year, we wanted to open a London office. So we had a few people in our Leeds office that are maybe from down there or have a passion to work in London. It's something Josh and I did for 3 years with 𝗟𝙂 years ago. So it kind of plays to our, I guess, certainly tugs at my heartstrings a little bit, because even going and viewing offices last summer, it kind of brought me back to what was a great time. And London as an office remains on our agenda, but we've decided, and I think fortunately so, to not make that investment this year. The people involved are happy to delay that project until it feels right. And we looked at leasing, we looked at flexible solutions as well, flexible working spaces, and we just want to be sure to do that. We'd almost like to set up a business down there that operates almost by itself. So rather than simply an extension of JBAndrews Leeds, we should be confident that the individuals going down are ready, and there should be enough of them to make it a proper business, because the cost down there is just phenomenal. We hope to be in a position to do that as soon as possible. So opening a London office, there are a couple of very key people within the business that have ambition to live and work in the US, which is actually our main market that we recruit in from a geographical perspective as well. And having nobody over there now, it doesn't hinder us, I don't think, but it certainly would make business sense to have an office over there. Beyond that, the MBO side of things is the biggest part, especially for selfishly speaking, for Josh and I in particular, and our two associate directors as well. That's really important. But we were given an opportunity by 𝗟𝙂as a group, by our bosses, that we have benefited from massively. We'd like to give that opportunity to people in the future as well, and we can do that today. But I think give it a couple of years, and we'll have a couple of people at least putting their hand up and saying, I'd like to do this. And ultimately, we'd like to give that opportunity and start that journey for other people. And we're 42 people today in the business. Started with just Josh and I and one other guy, which is great to kind of look back and reflect on, knowing how much work and how much hard work has gone into it. It's nice to look back on and think we've come quite a long way, and to be able to watch somebody else do that with hopefully our help as well as our boss's help as well. That business should thrive hopefully quicker than even we did. As I said, we had a really good first year, so fingers crossed we can afford that opportunity to others. I guess the ultimate goal then, and my kind of that big, hairy, ambitious goal for me is for us to sell JBAndrews in the future. And if I could put a specific age to retire at some point. My father, he was lucky enough to retire at 55, 56, I think. So if I can either replicate or even beat that, that would be pretty cool. So
fantastic, very exciting then. Very, very exciting times. And what would you say to anyone that was thinking of going into business right now?
Do it. If there's I think we've been very lucky in that we've never had to have outside investment or anything to get set up. We've never needed, or at least to our knowledge, we never needed to have X amount saved in a company bank account or somewhere to set this up. We were given that chance. We were able to, I guess, profit from economies of scale across a group of companies. There was already a blueprint in place for success for something like that. So I think we'd landed on our feet with that, and that's not going to be the case for everybody. But if there's the desire, if there's the motivation there, I personally believe if anybody's successful in this industry, they can do it themselves. But we benefited massively from a leg up, and I don't think we're afraid to kind of admit that either. But it's been an incredibly rewarding experience, and it's only 5 years in for us, and 25, 30 years more working, possibly longer than that. We're going to see this over and over again. And I would definitely encourage people to do it.
Brilliant. And if you started again, is there anything significant that you might do differently?
Well, two things come to mind immediately. There's the part that I mentioned earlier in walking before running. We started with two, as I said, Josh and I, and then we brought somebody with us from Mackenzie Stewart at the time as well, after I think the first few weeks, and seeing other businesses do something similar now, but with 15 to 20 people at the start. Having a bigger team at the start would be so beneficial. Provided that financial support was there, or that the finances were in place to do so. That would be a big thing. The other thing was it took us 2 or 3 years to really push on evolving the tech side of what we did. So we had a legacy CRM system that was fit for purpose, but it was outdated, and that was the first big investment that we made. Rather than a group decision, it was the first thing that we did. And had we done that sooner, then I don't know is the answer as to whether it would have kicked us on or not. But just having that, I guess, having the ability, the knowledge, the desire to do it sooner, we constantly want to improve, and we'd have done it sooner.
Brilliant. And is it what would be the best advice you could give an 18-year-old you if you're able to go back in time and do so, Ben?
Loosen up a bit, probably back then. I guess, as I said at the start, I picked my studies with the idea of keeping doors open, and just, I guess, find something I was good at and enjoyed, and run with it, I think is
brilliant.
The best possible thing. I wouldn't have, looking back, I wouldn't change industry. I wouldn't change route. So loosen up a little bit, believe that you can do the more sales driven side, and probably get a job while at uni, which I did not do. And we interview some people, and you can tell the difference, in my opinion, you can tell the difference between somebody who has had and maintained a job throughout studies and shown that extra graft. You can see that with their ethic. There is a difference, in my opinion. Sometimes there are anomalies, but I'd have pushed myself to go beyond just, I did refereeing while at uni, and I'm not entirely sure that counts as a certainly not in the way I did it. It didn't count as a job. So I'd push myself now to go a little bit further than I did. Perhaps it was slightly lazy of me before, but I think that could have shaped me a little bit differently.
Great, that's great. Both my daughters have jobs. One's in college, one's in school. So
good.
I'll congratulate them both on this evening.
No, I think it's the right thing.
But Ben, it's been absolutely fascinating, and well done for everything you've achieved so far. And it'd be great to, maybe come back in a year's time and see how things have gone, especially with the MBO. But for anyone that's watching that might want to get in touch with you or JBAndrews, what might be the easiest way to do that?
LinkedIn, 100%. Simply my name, you'll be able to find me on there. Visit the JBAndrews page on there, on all our socials. I'm sure our marketing guy would love us to say about the Instagram, the Twitter, the Facebook, but no, easiest way via LinkedIn. And I live my life on that platform, so I'll see it straight away. But our website as well is JB-Andrews.com, and you'll see everything on there. New website as of last year. Any feedback always appreciated, but they're the easiest ways to get hold of us or get hold of me.
Brilliant. Well, again, thanks again so much for your time today. It's been really interesting and inspiring, and yeah, best of luck for the future.
Thank you, Chris.
Cheers.